Hi guys, just waiting for Debbie. Hello everyone. To everyone joining, to Debbie, welcome. I've been told to quickly introduce Baatein because there's a bunch of people who are not familiar with it. So the students of the National Institute of Design India, they host what they call Baatein sessions. And Baatein is the Hindi word for conversations or chats. And ordinarily they have people come and present their work to the students and answer their questions. But during the pandemic, they've shifted to the Instagram Live format, and they've been hosting Q&As with largely alumni of the college. So when they reached out to me for one of these Q&As, I thought, I've just been out of college for like barely a minute. I don't have much to offer. So I thought, let me see if I can rope in someone loads better. And here we are with Debbie Millman. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. It's so good to see you again. I haven't seen you since Design Indaba.
Yeah.
Where you rocked the stage. You did such a good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And you were inspiring as always. But that feels like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it?
Right? It was right before everything. It was just beginning for us, sort of in awareness.
Absolutely. I mean, the Italian speaker there was kind of warning us that, guys, you don't know how bad it's going to get because Italy had already been badly affected. And she was right. I'm going to now force you to listen to me talking about your glittering achievements for half a second. To introduce you to everyone. So Debbie Millman is the President Emeritus of the American Institute of Graphic Arts. She is the co-founder and chair of the Masters in Branding at the School of Visual Arts, which is the first Masters in Branding anywhere in the world. She's published several books. She is a regular at the best design conferences. She is perhaps most famous for being the host of Design Matters, which is amongst the longest running podcasts period and definitely the longest running design podcast, which I think it's completing 15 years this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it just passed 15 years. We're going into year 16.
Wow, congratulations. And she's also the editorial director of Print Magazine. So we're so honored to have her here, even though it's an inconvenient hour for her.
It's fine. I'm a night owl. This is much better than early in the morning.
Awesome. But my first question, though, is about a different magazine. It is about a magazine called Debutante. Can you tell us? What can you tell us about Debutante magazine?
Well done.
I wouldn't try to come to this anything less than well prepared.
So Debutante is the name of a magazine that I co-created with one of my neighborhood friends between, I think, either 5th grade and 6th grade or 6th grade and 7th grade. I lived on Long Island in East Northport, and I had a very good friend who lived a couple of blocks away, and her name was Debbie also. And we handmade the entire magazine. Now this was, I would say, maybe 1972 or 1973, so before most people that are watching this were born. But there was no computer technology that we were able to get our hands on. I think at that point probably the only place you could get computer technology would be NASA or something like that. But so we hand wrote the entire thing, and because both of our names were Debbie, we had this, what I think is an absolutely brilliant idea to call the magazine Debutante. And I still maintain that it's a really good name for a magazine. But the really fun part of the story is that at the very beginning of Facebook, when all of our old high school and junior high school and elementary school friends were finding each other, so Debbie and I reconnected on Facebook, and we just had this wonderful conversation about our memories of making this magazine that summer and making the whole thing by hand.
Were you able to track it down though, or is that?
I definitely didn't have it, and she said that she didn't either. So I'm assuming that one of our mothers chucked it.
Yeah, that happens. A quick note to everyone watching, I'm going to pin a comment here saying that just send in questions in the question box, and I'm going to disable comments so that Debbie's face isn't obscured for everyone watching. I hate this
that's
feature.
okay.
No, I mean,
that's
no.
okay.
I hate this feature of Instagram that the host's face is like all clear, but the guest's face isn't. So yeah, I'm just quickly going to do that. Yeah, so to everyone joining, the comments are disabled, but you can send in questions in the question box. So
wait a minute, people can't do the hearts anymore? Oh, good, they can still do hearts. Okay, good.
Yeah, they can still send us hearts. We love the hearts.
That makes me happy.
Yeah. So Debbie ran magazine at the age of 12. You're a designer. You're a founder, creator of a magazine at the age of 12. Right? but interestingly, you didn't end up majoring in design. You majored in literature, from what I understand. And we did have a few write-in questions from people asking if it's okay for someone who doesn't have a degree in design to practice it. I think they'll be very encouraged to hear that that's not what you did.
Well, I didn't practice it because I didn't know that it was something to practice. I didn't even know that it was a discipline. When I was in college and started working on the school newspaper, then I thought, oh, this is really fun. Maybe I'll try to work at a magazine when I graduate, and did, and tried to. I didn't work at the magazine that I wanted to, but I ended up working at a magazine for about a year. But when I first moved to New York, I mean, I'm a native New Yorker. When I say moved to New York, I mean, when I first moved to Manhattan, I didn't really feel qualified to compete with anyone. And the idea of failing at something that I didn't even feel qualified to compete for was just too big a mountain to try and climb at that point. So for most of my 20s, I sort of just took whatever was offered me. I wanted more, but I didn't know how to go out and get more. You know, I didn't think I was smart enough or talented enough or pretty enough or connected enough, or, you know, it had nice clothes. I didn't feel like I had anything that would support my quest for being better than I was.
I mean, that's something I'm sure so many people can relate to not feeling like you make the cut and there is some invisible cut that you don't quite qualify for.
Yeah.
In fact, like, I mean, in reading about you, what really struck me was how candid you've been about your struggles and the rejections that you faced or thought you faced anyway in your initial years. And could you talk to us a little bit about those?
Well, it's not something that I all along was touting. It wasn't thinking, you know, in my 20s, oh, here's a rejection I can talk about and feel proud of. You know, there wasn't any fail forward, fail fast kind of mentality in my life at that point. I was really ashamed of my failures and rejections, and either pretended that they didn't happen, pretended that they didn't matter, or didn't tell anybody. So there wasn't a sense of, well, look at me, you know, striving to be better than I am and not making it. And that's a great anecdote to share with people. It really wasn't until my 40s, and I would even say into my 50s. I don't even know that I go as far as even including my 40s. I would say it was probably in my early 50s where I was like, this might help people. This situation might give someone else who's in their 20s some sense of hope and possibility. And I didn't feel ashamed of it anymore. That's really what it is. You know, it got to a point where I'd done enough internal work where hiding it or omitting it, you know, it wasn't even hiding it, but just sort of that lie of omission just felt like that wasn't fair.
because in omitting it, you're kind of perpetuating this vision of like just success, like outright success.
Well, at the time, I was really afraid people would judge me for it, which was really more a indication of my own issues and not really accurate in terms of being something that I think would be worthy of being judged. I was judging me. And so then I was projecting that out to other people. And as I got older and, you know, done a lot of work around this, felt that I wasn't embarrassed about it anymore. It just was what it was. It contributed to who I am. And not feeling ashamed of it anymore really gave me a freedom in sharing it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in fact, I mean, since most of the audience is current students, if not early career graphic designers or designers in general, I think like, so there's, you know, you said about rejection, quote, I'm very sensitive and any rejection takes me off of that path for quite some time. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's all too common.
Well, I think that my sense of self is still fragile enough to result in my being probably somewhat, I take these rejections or failures disproportionately seriously, you know, so rather than think, oh, well, so-and-so can't be on the show, or this job didn't come through, or this happened, rather than just chalk it up to you can't always get what you want, or
logistics,
it wasn't meant to be, or any number of things. It's, you know, I go immediately to I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm never going to amount to anything else, you know, everybody hates me, you know. I globalize, and I know that I'm globalizing. I mean, that's the good news, is that I now know that I'm globalizing. I know when I get into one of these ruts, it lasts for not even a day, maybe a day or less, and I recover really quickly. Whereas in the past, I would I sort of push it away, and those things don't really, pushing it away doesn't work because it catches up with you, and then when it catches up with you.
Sorry, we've lost you. Yeah, we lost you for a second. Now you're back.
You know what I have to do? I have to plug in my battery. I guess this is using a lot of battery, so I'm just going to run and get it, okay? Okay.
Sure, no worries. Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. I think this is, never mind. I have it right here.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, good. Sorry for the close-up, guys.
I'm on.
Oh, no, that's the wrong side. Oh, no, it isn't. Okay, sorry for the close-up. Oh, that's not the right one. Okay, I'll be right back. One minute.
Anyone who's just tuning in, Debbie's gone to get her. Let me see.
You know, one thing I have learned is that technology is not my friend. It is not my friend.
I found that technology is a very fair weather friend. When you need it the most, that's when it fails you.
Okay. I'm going to have to reorganize. I'm so sorry.
No, not at all.
I prepare for my own podcast. I clearly don't prepare for others. Okay, one sec.
Not at all. Guys, anyone who's joined in after I said this laugh, the comments are turned off so that Debbie's face is not obscured. You can send in questions in the question box. Time permitting, we'll get to those questions. I do have a lot of the write-in questions to get to. So.
Okay. Very close to being okay. Sorry.
Not at all. Don't worry.
I'm such an idiot. Okay, here we go. Okay. I'm back. Okay.
Awesome.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, good.
I mean, so you mentioned that so in college, when you joined the student newspaper, that's when you kind of really found your interest. However, that wasn't like the smoothest road even getting to that newspaper, was it? I mean,
No,
you were
I wanted to
determined
work.
and
I
you-
wanted to work at the school newspaper from the first semester I got to college, and I didn't actually start working at the student newspaper until my second semester junior year. So it was 3 years, and I was rejected. I wasn't really rejected. I was asked to provide some examples of my work, and the only examples of my work I had were from high school, and I was too embarrassed to show my high school newspaper and my high school magazine, which both of which I worked on, because I thought that seemed infantile and, you know, sophomoric, and so I didn't have anything to show. And so because I didn't have anything to show, rather than say, I don't have anything to show, but give me a chance to show you what I can do, I just retreated like a little mouse and longed to do it for years more. And then finally got my courage again to go up to the student newspaper 3 years later. And at that point, I had an opportunity to write a piece that needed to be done sort of on the spot. And that resulted in my then doing really well with writing and then taking over the arts and features section of in my senior year. And that really set the stage for what I realized was what I wanted to pursue, which was some combination of the visual and the editorial. And one of the things that we had to do when we were putting the paper together, which is what it was called back then, was
putting it
to,
together. Got it.
we had to do the design and the writing. And so the editor was responsible for the design. And that part was, that just, you know, I fell madly in love, like head over heels. And then I realized that there was this whole world of design. I took one design class, like an introduction to design class. And then I graduated and started working. I always have had a job that was some sort of hybrid between the editorial and the visual. And in a lot of ways, that's what branding is as well. So, but branding didn't happen. I didn't start working in branding until I was about 32 or 33, but minimally 10 years after I graduated, until I started working in branding.
And that would be the then small company called Sterling. Was that the first time?
No. I worked at a company that was merging with Interbrand at the time. So it was a small company that had been acquired by Omnicom and then merged with Interbrand. And so while I was there, the 2 years that I was there, I started at the Schechter Group, and then that migrated into that migrated into Interbrand, and that migration, that combination of two companies was really fraught, and it wasn't a good situation culturally, and people were leaving, and it was just really politically bedlam there. And so I ultimately decided to leave, and then got this position at Sterling, and I was there for 21 years.
Yeah. And you grew it from a tiny office to 5 offices.
To 5 offices. I mean, the biggest thing that I think that happened was 13 years after I got there, I had become a partner. So there were 3 partners. I was the second largest shareholder after the founder, and we were able to sell the company to Omnicom, of all places. So it was very symmetrical, to have that come back again as a big factor in my life.
Yeah. And so while you're at Sterling and you've expanded it, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there was a point when 20% of an American supermarket would be full of brands that you've touched in some way.
Yeah. Roxanne and I were in the supermarket last weekend, and I thought, I'm going to start going around and photographing all the brands that I've worked on, some of which have been redesigned, but a lot of them are still the designs that I created or helped create, because it wasn't just me. And it was just amazing to go into various categories and aisles and refrigerators and whatnot and see, oh, I worked on 3 of those yogurt brands and 5 of those juice brands and 6 of those carbonated soft drinks and 10 of those salty snacks, and those cereals and that soup. And it was amazing. It was just amazing to have that experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. And like, I mean, I've dabbled in a tiny way in branding myself, so I can't even imagine how good and meaningful it must feel to basically you're touching like millions of lives through your product, right? Through these huge companies. So you're at Sterling and you have this giant footprint and you're doing so well. And then there is, from what I understand, there's a speak up story.
Right? The speak up story, yes. The
Would
story
you
that
just want to share it?
Sure. I mean, I'm afraid that a lot of people that might be tuning in that are aware of Speak Up or of my work are familiar with it. So forgive me if you've heard this before. But for anybody new, this was one of the defining moments of my life.
You're good.
Okay, good. Well, I have to set the stage. It was 2003. So what were we doing online in 2003? Not anything near what we were doing now. You know, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook. So we were emailing, we were shopping online. You know, the J. Crew catalog was all the rage. We were playing games, and there was porn. You know, there really wasn't a lot else.
Yeah.
And but forums were very popular where people could go and talk about specific topics and create community. And out of that, blogs were born. And the word blog actually comes from the word weblog, so blog. And I had never heard of a blog. I never heard of that word before. And a friend of mine in May of 2003 sent me a link to an article that she had found, which was basically a takedown of my career. I had been appointed a judge in that year's AIGA competition for branding and packaging. And as part of my credentials to prove why I had been asked to be a judge, my work that was in the catalog were the Burger King logo and the Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones merchandising and packaging. And so a couple of guys from Speak Up saw that work, saw some coverage of me in a magazine called Graphic Design USA, which they considered to be an inferior magazine, and thought that I was a corporate clown that had somehow coerced AIGA to work with me, when in fact it was the opposite. AIGA had already rejected me, and the executive director, as a sort of consolation prize for being rejected, asked me to be a judge in this competition as a way of trying to encourage me not to abandon the organization completely. So I had already been kicked to the curb by AIGA at that point. And then this article came out, and these were the renegades. These were the mavericks and the anti-AIGAers. And so here I had the AIGA that already hated me, and now the anti-AIGA contingent that hated me. They called me a she-devil. I mean, it was just really horrible. And I felt like the most hated person in the graphic design community in the United States. So that was a really rough moment. I was really ashamed. I was really embarrassed. I didn't want the people in my office to see this. I didn't want them to be embarrassed. I didn't want to feel like I had to shame them in any way. It was a dark, dark day, and it continued to be pretty dark for a couple of weeks. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know if I should pretend that it never happened the way I ordinarily would have. But then about 3 weeks in, I decided to enter the fray and try to talk to them about how the Burger King logo was created and why and how we did the research globally, and really what gave them the right to say that it was a bad logo if consumers and people all over the world were shown the logo and really liked it. So
Yeah.
I tried to hold my ground. I didn't want to be too nasty. I didn't want to be too defensive. I kind of came in very like, hey guys, like it didn't matter to me, but of course it did. But I tried to be graceful about it. And I think that's what
I
turned the tide.
I read that thread. I think you were far too kind, kinder than I ever would have been.
Well, online bullying was really new to me. It was not even a term back then. And I thought if I appeared defensive, that I'd be playing into their hands and wanted to sort of be above it a bit. But that experience ultimately led to, I would say, I can't think of one opportunity that's happened since then that doesn't come from that experience of being.
That's why I wanted to talk about it. Yeah.
I mean, I wrote in, I tried to state my case with as much dignity as I could. And then a few weeks after the whole thing died down, Armin Vitt, the founder of Speak Up, asked me if I wanted to write for Speak Up. And of course I did. Of course I did. And so I started writing for Speak Up. And that fall, we went to the annual AIGA conference, and we went there to sort of ostensibly cause him trouble. We had these brochures that we've made with some of the best commentary of Speak Up that year. We called it Stop Being Sheep, which was a riff on Eric Spiekerman's Stop Stealing Sheep. And we sort of put it in the conference rooms and the bathrooms and the restaurants, and
like a guerrilla movement.
Guerrilla, totally guerrilla. And then from that, I ended up meeting the editor of Print Magazine, the then editor, the great editor, Joyce Kay. I started writing for the magazine. I met Steve Heller at a conference that Joyce put on that she invited me to participate in. Steve Heller ended up changing my life. He recommended me for my first book. He asked me if I'd be interested in creating this master's program in branding, which I did, and so on and so forth. I mean, every major opportunity that came out of what I then thought was the lowest moment in my professional life, one that I could never recover from, ultimately was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to learn there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so this is like a theme, right? Like, so you said that your membership to AIGA was rejected. I mean, it was not renewed the second time.
No, I was on the board of the brand experience group. It was like a special interest group, and I was on the board for 2 years. And then, in order to stay on the board, you had to reapply. Yeah. And I was rejected.
And then, though, you went on to become president of AIGA.
Yeah. So that was in 2002, I think, 2001. Or 2002, I just sort of gave up with AIGA after that. And then in 2004, Emily Oberman, who was really one of my heroes, somebody I had been admiring from afar for at least 10 years, wrote me out of the blue and asked me if I'd be interested in joining the AIGA board, the New York chapter. And I did that for 3 years, which I loved. And then I applied I was nominated and I went on the national board, and I did that for 3 years. And then I became the president of all of the AIGA.
Yeah, and last year you won the coveted medal of the AIGA as well.
Yeah, year ago.
Yeah, and Speak Up started with that sort of debacle, and then you ended up working with them, and I understand you're very close to the founder now. So
I'm very good friends with Armin. I mean, Armin and Bryony at the time in 2003, Speak Up was a year old, and they've gone on to create many other businesses. Not only are they two of my closest friends, I'm also the godmother to their oldest daughter. So again, you would never,
you couldn't write this stuff.
Right. You couldn't, nobody would believe it. Nobody would believe it.
Exactly. So now, I mean, like, Steve Heller got you that, your first book job, and then you founded the SBA program with him also, if I understand. And you like overall everything's as good as it can be, and you're interviewing with Design Matters, which has been going on all this while. You're interviewing all these luminaries, and I read that you say that except for Milton Glaser and Minnelli, you've signed amongst all of them, amongst all these successful people, and you being one of them, there's still a pervasive sense of insecurity, which would be surprising to someone like me.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's still trying to make good work. Just because you make good work in the past doesn't mean you're going to make it again. And I think that there's always a sense of hoping that your best work isn't behind you, especially when you become known for something. It's very hard to continue to keep hitting the home run. Sometimes you're going to strike out, and that's scary. That's scary because in our business, a lot of the time you're only as good as the last thing you did.
Yeah.
So, but I think that, for me, my success didn't really start until, let's say, 2004, 2005. That was 15 years ago. I was in my mid-40s.
Yeah.
So I think that there's something to be said for it taking a long time, because I do think then the longer it will last. And one thing that I say over and over now in almost any interview, if the opportunity arises, is something that David Lee Roth said to me in the interview that we did about a year ago. And David Lee Roth was the front man of the band Van Halen. Yeah. And Van Halen in the 1980s was the most popular band in the world. Yeah. Hit after hit after hit. They were total rock gods. They were total ladies' men. They were just all that and then some. Yeah. And I asked him what it felt like to be the front man of the biggest rock band in the world at that moment. They were invincible. It was 1984 when their album came out, 1984.
Okay.
And he paused and he said that it was a really interesting moment, that it was something that we have to be careful when considering, because when you get that far up the mountain, when you get to the tippy top of the mountain, when you are at the very peak, it's usually really cold. You're often alone, and there's only one direction. You can only walk in one direction.
Yeah,
and that I think that's one of the most profound things that I've ever heard, because it's true. So you reach, you strive, and then what happens if you achieve everything you ever wanted? Then what? And so I think there is something to be said for pacing yourself and for also appreciating the journey. And this is something I'm saying to you. I'm not somebody that does that willingly. I fight with myself all the time. And Roxanne tells me all the time that I'll set a bar and then I'll reach that bar and I'm like, then I move the bar. And so I can't even enjoy the bar. I just keep pushing it up. And that is fueled by self-esteem issues, because, I need that to feel like I'm meaningful or valuable or matter. And I don't wish that on anyone.
Yeah. No, that's definitely, I think, and I feel like it's never been more relevant than today, because since our audience is largely students and young graphic designers such as myself, and the world is so virtual, especially the field of design is so visual and hence virtual, that it feels like success, like you have a strange relationship with success where it almost feels attainable, but at the same time it feels completely unattainable. It also, there's like a lot of societal pressure to achieve when young, like you said, that that's not something you think happened to you. And
right.
So what's your advice to people who deal with those kinds of pressures?
Decide what is more important to you. One of the things that I've been asked time and time again is what kept you going in the face of these failures?
Yeah.
What kept you going in the face of the rejections? And I thought about it a lot. And ultimately, my hope for something bigger and better was bigger than my shame at being humiliated or rejected. And so my desire, my hope, my dream was bigger than my fear. And it might have just been, you know, one iota bigger, but it was enough to propel me forward.
Yeah.
And so that's what you have to think about. What's more important to me? Continuing to try and hoping that I will indeed make it or get it, or stop trying and never know.
Yeah. 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 Trying in the face of even perceived defeat, because the things that qualify as defeat or success nowadays are quite dubious, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So pivoting a little bit to, I've also read that one other thing that you've been open about, and we all have the benefit of learning from people like, such as you, who are candid, in spite of being on the other side of the golden fence, so to speak, is how therapy, you know, the importance of therapy and how that's helped you. And people, young people, students, etc., deal with so many mental health issues, and they often go unaddressed. So would you like to speak a bit about how it's helped you?
Well, it saved my life. So that is the sort of definition of help.
Yeah. It doesn't get bigger than that.
You know, it's been a lot of work. I've been in therapy for half my life. So I owe a lot to that process and to my therapist for helping me understand my motivations, my fears, my sense of self. And it's a lifetime journey. I'm not finished yet and still feel like I have a lot to uncover and discover. And I've seen enough improvement and really dramatic change over the time that I feel that though it's very slow, it is consistent.
Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I'm not.
I know people are asking questions. Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. No, that, I mean, and even though it is a lifetime's worth of work, the important thing is to go and seek it out and take that first step, which I think is what a lot.
Yeah, I don't think there's any stigma. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to, you know.
Yeah.
If you broke your arm, you'd go to the doctor. If you contracted the flu, you'd go to the doctor. If you had a terrible disease, you'd go to the doctor. So if you aren't feeling good emotionally or mentally, why not go to the doctor?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. Awesome. Another thing, though, that I thought about, like when I was thinking about what we should touch upon in this interview, is that you are as successful as you are, and you are a woman, right? And that's a fraught road. And I mean, this is a fact that I know, but I only know theoretically because I'm not a woman. So I reached out to the Mumbai chapter of Ladies Wine Design to see if they had any questions on this front. And they have two, and I just pose them both and then you can answer them. The first is, how does a woman assert herself in a male-dominated conversation? And the second is, how do you demand equal pay when money is never discussed amongst peers or colleagues usually? So you don't even know what that equal would mean.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you assert yourself?
Yeah. How do we heard? Yeah.
You have to push your way through with as much charm as possible. And I'm not.
So this is the lean-in school of thought, kind of.
What's that?
This is like the lean-in school of thought, where you have to navigate the systems that exist, which...
To a degree, yeah. I mean, I think that for me, because I put so much of my own value and my own self-worth into achievement, that I just worked harder than anybody else. And so I would, you know, in the first decades of my career, I would be the first person in. I was the last person to leave. I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I mean, I don't think I could have had the career that I have if I had been, if I had a big family that I was helping to support. and raise. It just, I don't think it could have happened. I don't know that unless you're very, very wealthy and have a lot of help, that a woman can do it all. It's just, I don't know that a man can do it all. One person can't do it all. It's just really hard. And so I chose my career and gave it everything that I had, and was always tried to be better than everybody. And when I wasn't, one of the issues that I've dealt with is I've never felt like I could blame someone else. Like I wasn't, oh, this happened because I'm a woman, or this happened because I'm whatever, not pretty enough or whatever. I always thought it was something intrinsic about me, not my gender. It was just something intrinsically wrong with me, not being a woman. And so because I didn't think that way, I just kept plowing through, and I didn't let the fact that I didn't see other women around me stop my path forward. I just kept pushing. And what's interesting is that professionally, I've always been able to be very clear about what I wanted. Personally, not so much. I'm very shy about my inner emotions and my sense of self. But professionally is where I do now have more confidence. And so I always fought for what I felt I deserved. And I don't know really where that has come from. So when I was at Sterling, I came in and did really, really well. And one of the things that I did was I was working in sales. And so when you're in sales and bringing in business, it's very clear when you're doing well and when you're not. It's because
it's quantitative.
Yeah. And so I did really, really well. And when I was doing really, really, really well, after about 3 years, one of the things that I had written into my employment contract was that I would be entitled to potentially become a partner after a certain amount of success and time. And so that time came, and I was like a dog with a bone wanting that partnership. And it got to a point where, because my partner at the time, nobody wants to give up shares. He was dragging his heels, and I did something that I don't even know how I did it. I threatened to leave.
Wow.
And I was really good at what I did, and I loved my job. I loved my job. And I wasn't, and I said, well, you know what? If you don't give me the shares, I'm going to have to leave. And I went home that night and I cried. I'm like, what have I done? They might call my bluff. He might say, okay, bye. And I love this job. So then I came back the next day, and he gave me 1% of one share. So I got like 1,000th of a share. And then over the years, I just had to keep doing well and earning more. It was never just given to me. It was never like, here, Debbie, you've done really well, and now we're going to reward you with all of these things. It was a slugfest, and I had to fight for everything. And I just never relented. And because I had the tangible success, because I could say, here's the amount of money I brought into the company, here's the amount of growth that we've been able to achieve, there was no doubt about my value. And so I think that's what propelled my steadfast sort of path.
So you needed to have your own assessment of your value to have the security to pull a stunt like that. You needed to know that you're valuable enough.
Well, I felt on one level I did, but then, when I heard the words coming out of my mouth, I was like, oh my God. I didn't want to leave. Like, I was really scared that they were going to be like, okay, well, bye.
Yeah. Yikes.
It was the first time in my life that I was really successful. So the idea that then I would be leaving that success, I was terrified, but it all worked out.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome.
But sometimes I think you have to do that. You have to stand up for yourself because nobody else is going to do it. The only person that's ever been like, here, Debbie, would you like this? Has been Steve Heller. He recommended me my first book deal, and he recommended me to SVA. Everything else has been earned.
Understood. So another common question I got when I asked for write-ins was people like fresh undergrads and early career designers who are contemplating doing a graduate program. I mean, there's obviously a lot of dilemmas to decide what to do it in, whether to specialize, whether to make a lateral shift, things like that. But there's also obviously a lot of monetary consideration that goes into that because scholarships are hard to find and programs tend to be pretty expensive. So as someone who is on the other side of that table and who's runs a master's program, what would be your advice as to what kind of calculus should students use? How should they decide?
Well,
yeah,
I love my Indian students. They're the best students we have.
That's right.
Now, I MC Design Yatra in 2012.
Yeah, that's right.
And after that, we got a lot of Indian students, and we had like 4 or 5 every year until this year. Last year and the year before, we had the most spectacular group of students ever. And this year we don't have any people from India in our program, and I'm just devastated. So if anybody's interested in coming to the School of Visual Arts and majoring in branding and getting a graduate degree in branding, you definitely have a leg up if you come from India. This is live, and then it goes away, right?
Yeah. Sure, it goes away, yes. No, but in terms of advice in general, how to think about choosing a master's degree and like, how do you weigh that kind of as a decision if you are not very well to do, etc.? Would you have
Well, I mean, there are scholarships. I think that any opportunity you have in your life to have education is a gift. Yeah. I do know that our program is a life-changing experience. It's 10.5 months. You can work full-time while you're taking the program. So you don't have to stop your whole life. We do classes Monday through Friday, 6:30 in the evening till 9. We are very, very concentrated on doing work that is making a difference, that is going to help you get a better job or a good job or your first job. Although we tend to like to have people that have some experience, although it's not a requirement, it is helpful. And we do a lot of real world projects. We do at least 2 projects with clients every year. This year we did a project with Uber and a project with Bayer. Last year we did a project with Google. So we do a lot of real world client work. And we teach people how to think, how to work hard, and how to create a career in branding.
Got it. Coming to, I mean, we don't have too much time left, so I'm going to try to wrap it up soon. I mean, we have to address, I think, the elephant, the big bad elephant of the whole world right now, which is this pandemic and what it has done to pretty much all industries. For context, to anyone who's joined in after the beginning of this video, Debbie and I first met at the Design Indaba conference, which was earlier this year, and which was a fantastic design conference organized in Cape Town, South Africa. She took the stage. She was amazing as always, inspirational as always. And back then we were there and we were in the vineyards of Cape Town, etc. It was beautiful, and we would never have thought that it would so quickly become like this, right?
Yes, because I was supposed to come back from India. South Africa. I went from South Africa to Helsinki. And then I went back to New York, and then I was going to be there for like 5 days and then go back to Australia. And I never was able to go to Australia.
Yeah.
That's how fast everything changed.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a bit of a standstill. No one really knows what's going to happen. So what's your advice to students who have facing uncertain futures? I know SBA had its convocation just a couple of days ago online, right? So like,
Yes.
yeah. So how do you deal with like the uncertainty if you're a student? I mean,
I wish that I could tell you. I'm not somebody that likes uncertainty. I hate uncertainty. Even though everything is really uncertain, I like to have a lot of
control.
clarity about my schedule and planning. And, you know, I have a paper calendar. I can show it to you. You know, it's, you know,
Oh, wow.
I love to have things written down. I'm very analog. And not knowing what's going to happen in a month is terrifying. I had to get a mouth guard because I was sleeping so fitfully. I do think that the one thing that I've been experiencing as I'm sheltering at home is trying to prioritize the most important things in my life post-pandemic. You know, what are the things that I do just because other people want me to do them? What are the things that I do because I want to do them? What am I not making time to do because I'm afraid? I've been doing a lot of thinking about, you know, what I want this next chapter of my life to be and what I want to commit to. And one thing I am really sure about is that I do love teaching. I really miss the culture of our studio at SBA. And I do think we're giving students an equal to what they would have gotten in person education intellectually. I do think we're giving them everything that we'd have given them in person, if not more. I had my students actually were like, okay, stop with the extra stuff. We're good. It's like book club and movie club and an extra class and a workshop. And they were like, we need a break. But I do miss the camaraderie, we're just started thesis. It's my favorite time of the year. It gets hot in New York and everybody's working really hard and the air conditioners break and the fans are running and everybody's crazy. And I love it. I love every bit of it. So I'm sad that it's not happening in the same way, but it does give me an opportunity to try something new. You know, I never was even remotely interested in online learning. I was really vehemently against it. One, because as you can tell, I'm not particularly tech savvy, and also because I love the face-to-face. But what it has taught me, this experience, is that it is possible to teach online. I don't know that I'll necessarily do an entire program online, but who knows? But I do like the democratization of everybody being equal, and even shy people can participate, or the shyer people would participate because there's a chat room and things like that. So I do like that. And then for sure, what I'm going to be doing for sure is starting an executive education program.
Got it. Sorry, I think I've screwed up my video. Yeah, sorry. And okay, I'm new to this. Is my first live ever, so I am screwing it up. I was trying to look through the questions that are coming in, and one of them is the one that I think it's on your screen as well. It says a few things you would recommend a graphic designer, communication designer to bring into practice. I think it's about what do you think is required for a good graphic design person to bring into practice, as opposed to maybe what's out there. I think that's what it might mean.
Well, I'm gonna quote Michael Beirut, because he said that he felt that having an understanding of culture was more important than anything, and that while his design education was remarkable, his education of culture and learning about the world was as important to him in his practice. So I think that what's important to be able to have at least a working expertise in is behavioral psychology, cultural anthropology, economics and the language of business, as well as creativity. So those are the four things that I think every designer needs to have at least a rudimentary knowledge of: behavioral psychology, cultural anthropology, economics, and creativity. And then, of course, I think the single most important skill that any designer needs to have after being able to design is being able to present. So you must be able to present your work. You must be able to defend your ideas. If you aren't able to articulate strategically what is beneficial about what you're recommending, then it's just a beauty contest. And then you're only as good as your ability to articulate the idea. So you must know how to present. And if you don't, take a class. There's Toastmasters, there's all sorts of online programs now. Force yourself. It's really hard to do, but force yourself to become a good presenter. And even if you're shy, you still need to be a good presenter. You can still be shy, but you still need to be a good presenter.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't know how to get rid of this question, so I'm just going to stop trying now. Okay. So we're in the last few minutes. So what I'm going to do is I prepared a sort of a rapid fire where we quickly go through them. So I would be remiss of me if I did not mention your podcast, because all students, etc., everyone, I know when I was in college, I was listening to it and still do actually. So your favorite guest ever and your least favorite guest ever?
Okay. It's hard to say my favorite. So I'm going to say Roxane Gay.
I should have mentioned that one's not allowed. Okay.
Okay, so if not Roxane, then probably my whole series of episodes with Steve Heller. We do an episode every year, and that's a ritual for us now. So we're creating this oral history, which I love. So I would say that Steve. And my least favorite, I would say, although I think it's really a good episode to listen to, but it was my hardest, was with Richard Saul Wurman, who is the original founder of TED. He was,
that one.
It was very combative.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told me my questions were stupid, and he asked me if I thought he was an asshole, and I didn't answer. I just gave him a look that let him know what I was thinking.
Yeah. In fact, I heard that episode recently prepping for this, and I was like, that made me so scared. I was like, I hope this doesn't go that way.
Never.
Yeah. If you had to, for someone who's not familiar with your podcast and is just starting to listen to it, what would be the 3 episodes you recommend as gateway episodes?
Good question. Gateway episodes. Brene Brown. Simon Sinek.
Okay.
And Malcolm Gladwell. Aside from Roxane.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to pull up one quick question about branding, because that's such a specialty of yours. Some advice for students who want to get into branding but may not be able to afford a master's program.
Follow Seth Godin's, sign up for Seth Godin's daily newsletter. It's absolutely brilliant. And he teaches various classes. He has an alt MBA program. There's a number of programs that I would highly, highly, highly recommend. It's all online, and it's much more affordable. So Seth Godin, SETHGODIN, SethGodin.com. Awesome. Sign up for his daily newsletter. It's genius. It's brilliant.
Got it. So Instagram tells me we have 1.5 minutes remaining. So I'm going to do my outro and leave you with one last question. Hopefully you can answer it short. It's a bit of a long one, I think. Sorry. Guys, this video is going to go up also after it's done. So if you missed it, or if you want to send a link to your friends, it will be on baatein.nid's in IGTV. My last question, I don't know if this is proprietary at all, but I read that there's this life-changing assignment that Milton Glaser set you, and that now you do with your students. So would you like to just give that prompt to everyone watching, and then we'll leave on that?
Okay. Write an essay about how you want to envision your life 10 years from now, as if everything and anything you were hoping to create could be manifested. You can hear all about it on my episode with Tim Ferriss on his podcast, and it's all there. It's about 1.5 hours into the show. And then also somebody who listened made a website called your 10yearplan.com or something like that.
Okay, awesome. Guys, go check out that episode, because this assignment, I think, is the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you so much for being
Thank
there.
you.
Honored to have you.
So great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Awesome. Bye, everyone. Bye, Debbie.
Bye.